Hello, and welcome to the Permaculture-Aligned podcast with Permaculture Canada. Welcome, Graham.
Hey, Cormac, how you doing?
All right, we had a big mix-up there with the daylight savings. I always think it's ridiculous that humans think they can trick the sun. Just
It's
yeah,
always
I hate
funny
it.
for me, Cormac, when we
Mm.
changed to daylight savings because I remember back when I was in Australia, growing up as a kid, we lived close to the border between New South Wales and Queensland. And New South Wales had daylight savings, but Queensland never did. And so, depending on which radio station or TV station you'd watch, you'd be like an hour ahead or an hour behind for 5 months of the year.
I could never figure it. I think they tried it here a few years to not do it, and I think everybody wanted to go back. I don't know. I think it's daft. It is handy now. There only been 4 hours difference between us.
Yeah,
So I think for 4 weeks of the year we're 4 hours difference, which is handy.
yeah.
I just it's really annoying.
Yeah, so we have certain states in the US that don't have daylight savings, and honestly, I wish that we would go one way or the other, either permanent daylight savings or not at all, because the time change just messes with me every year, both times, at the start and the end of the daylight savings.
Yeah.
Messes
Uh,
with my sleep, messes with what I want to do with my schedule, and messes with our podcast.
yeah. So apologies that Lindsay's not here. She may join us later. Right. I'm not speaking on about time zones. How have you been, Graham?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. I've had a lot of activity. Gosh, I think with these podcasts, I've missed the last two of them, if I'm not mistaken, because of my travels in January and February. So here we are, it's March. I think the last time I was on here with everybody was December.
Yeah, I think we skipped a month there.
Yeah, could well have
Yeah.
done. Yep. But yeah, I mean, I've been, I guess, since the last time I was on, I've been to Saudi Arabia and Turkey and Egypt with the trip that I took overseas for the engineering work that I'm doing, for the waste to fuel process that I'm working on. And just recently here, the first 2 weeks of March, traveled to Indiana to attend a Purdue conference as an exhibitor for permaculture. Met a lot of new people and met some people that I'd met at the previous year's conference as well. And then last week I was in Pennsylvania and New Jersey doing a site visit for a customer and got to meet with a wonderful person by the name of Jen Ponder. She's been one of our strategic partners and affiliates now for, oh gosh, it's probably a year or more. And because I was going to eastern Pennsylvania to do a site visit for a customer, I was about an hour and a half drive from Jen's place. So I said, I might as well go that extra distance just so I could meet her in person, which was great. She lives in Morristown in New Jersey, which is one of the pretty historic sites from the Revolutionary War here in the United States. It's a place where George Washington and his army camped for quite some time when they were fighting the British back in the day. But it's a beautiful town, very historic, and Jen does culinary gardens. Her business is BLL Culinary Gardens, and she's a chef, and she helps people to grow all the food that they would like to have in their gardens, and then she teaches them how to use it all. And she's heavily involved with community gardens in Morristown, looking to put permaculture gardens at the local YMCA, couple of other private individuals that she's having us do design work for. And then she's going to be lighting the world on fire in Morristown, New Jersey to put a bunch of gardens in people's places, not just the stuff that she's been doing historically with the kitchen vegetables and herbs and stuff, but also with the fruit and stuff that we would do. So yeah, it was great to meet her. She took me to a couple nurseries, and they've already got their plants out in the nurseries in New Jersey because it's quite a bit warmer there than it is here in Michigan. I think it's still going to be another month and a half to 2 months before I see my nursery open here in Michigan. And like I said, in New Jersey, they've already got all their vegetable starts out in trays, ready to plant. All their flowers, and they're starting to bring in all of their fruit trees and stuff as well at the nurseries. So yeah, that was a good trip. I don't have anything in terms of travel going on for the next little bit, which is good. Just to fill in where Lindsay's at, I mean, she's now down in Panama, and she has been for the last few weeks at a tribal gathering that was held in Panama. And that's just finished. And here on I think it's the 25th, her and her partner will travel back to Toronto, where she's going to have an interview so she can get her US visa so she can get back into the US for the work that we're doing down here. So that's where she's at right now, is in Panama, after being, I guess, down in Mexico and all of Central America since late October. So she's about ready to come back home again. So that's an update on her and an update on me in terms of like the travel that we've been doing and some of our activities. We got a lot of design work going on, which is great. We've had a very, very good start to our year in terms of finding new customer opportunities. We got health clinics in Indiana that we're doing community garden design for. We've got a First Nations tribe up in British Columbia that we're going to do a whole heap of design work and coursework for. And that's going to involve Maria McKenty as one of our designers, who's based on Vancouver Island. You might remember her, Cormac, from working with her in the past. Anyway, so yeah, we've got a lot of great stuff going on. And like I said, I've got, site visits that I've been doing, and I've got more site visits coming up. So, Permaculture Canada has had a great start to the year, and it looks like we're going to have a fairly busy time coming into spring, which is good.
Great stuff. Graham, I don't think we've ever chatted on the podcast about your engineering work.
No, I don't think we have.
Do you want to share about that? Because it is relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. Be glad to. So, yeah, there's a company called Recircled, and that name is going to change here shortly because we're going to create a new division for this work that we're doing. But Recircled is started by a guy called Scott Kuhlman. He's worked in the fashion industry for 30 plus years as a producer and distributor of fashion industry clothing and goods, from out of Europe and Asia, etc. So if you're thinking of brands like Gucci, Balenciaga, Louis Vuitton, Yves Saint Laurent, all of those big famous name brand fashion companies, Scott's had work that he's done with them over time. But about 5 years ago, he started Recircle because he wanted to start taking care of the waste that's produced in the fashion industry. And just to put some numbers on that, it's about 93 million tons a year of waste that is produced from the fashion industry and textiles industry on a global basis every year. So historically, there's been this overproduction of clothing and fashion goods because the population keeps growing, and so the producers keep making more and more. And they always typically overestimate how much they're going to need based on what they think their sales are going to be. So there's always this inherent amount of overproduction, and that creates a lot of waste. Then there's all of the trimmings and waste that comes out of the production itself. And then if you go back even further, there's a lot of waste that is produced before textiles actually make it to the place where they're turned into clothing, in places like the mills and stuff like that. So I'm talking about cotton, wool, leather, and all of the synthetic textiles go into that. So Scott started looking at it from the perspective of what could be done to recycle all of these different items after they're produced. And he created a business around that where he was literally taking clothing and footwear, pulling it apart and then turning it into other goods to try to recycle it and turn it into something more useful, to upcycle the clothing items. So he did that for 3 or 4 years and found out that it was technically feasible but tremendously unprofitable because of the amount of labor and time involved in doing those types of activities. And so then he started to research what could we do instead that would take it a step back even further and turn it back into original molecules. And most of all of these different textiles that I've mentioned, they're all based on carbon, whether it's synthetic plastics or whether it's biomass-based textiles. And so what we're doing is that we've been, over the last year or so, developing these high pressure and high temperature processes, which are engineered, sort of mini refineries, you could say, which will take all of these solid materials, if they're carbon-based, and then break them down into original molecules that can then be recycled into the chemical industry as feedstocks, or turned into fuels that can be used to make electricity or be used for transportation, or turned into a gas stream which can be used to power a turbine and make electricity. And one of the other byproducts is biochar. When you're making it from leather or cotton or any biomass-based materials, grass, wood chips, whatever, you're going to make a lot of biochar as well, which can then be used for sequestration purposes, put it into agriculture. There's about 10,000 different documented uses for biochar. So all of this to say that back in May of last year, I was invited by one of our mutual contacts in permaculture to come and work for Recycled as a consulting engineer. And I did that and found myself then getting, somewhat full-time employed, working with Recircled as their director of engineering in order to develop all of these different processes. And there's about probably, a dozen or more different processes that we've looked at, but they all have the same approach of taking all of these different materials and turning it into gas or liquid fuel or biochar. And so I'm involved. I'd retired from engineering, Cormac, you might recall. Back in 2022, I hung up my hard hat and hung up my boots, so that I could be full-time working in permaculture. And I found that obviously tremendously satisfying and enjoyable. I haven't found permaculture to be anywhere near as lucrative as what it was like when I was at the top of my salary curve in engineering. But, we're starting new businesses here, and so that takes a little bit of time to get the, the income up to the level where we'd like it to be, and we're getting there. So I was invited to, come and work for this guy, for Scott and Recircled, and, I'm involved with it not just as an engineer, but I'm involved with it because it is so related to what we're doing in permaculture, especially with the biochar, regenerative agriculture emphasis that we have. Biochar is going to be one of the big things that's going to be a great soil amendment for use in agriculture in the coming decades. I got no doubt about that. And there's a lot of different companies that are investing in this same type of approach. So we're actually going to start producing thousands and then millions of tons of biochar on a global basis, mainly because people want to put it in the ground as a way to sequester carbon. And, there's a lot of big companies like anyone that's got a data center, whether it's a Google or Meta or Amazon, the companies that have got data centers, they have lots of electricity usage. Electricity usage has got a lot of carbon dioxide emissions attached to it. And so these same companies are investing in carbon sequestration as a way to offset their emissions. I'm not so much excited by that, other than it's a way to fund the processes that we're working on, because carbon credits are worth quite a bit of money at the present time because there's a shortage of them. But I'm in it for the biochar, no doubt about it. And I'm also in it from the perspective of displacing the use of fossil fuels for energy production. Having worked in oil refining and petrochemicals for most of my career, and then having moved into biofuels, such as biodiesel and ethanol, being able to make your own fuel is something that's incredibly fun from an engineering perspective. And with this particular process, we've got a lot of different fuels that we can make, which, like I said, can be used to power vehicles or to power electricity production. So a lot of good things to be involved in, and that's why I'm no longer retired as a chemical engineer.
Right. So obviously the permaculture principle, produce no waste.
Yeah.
So now these waste streams funnel into your machine, and then all these outputs. Then you have biochar goes into the earth, oil for fuel.
Yeah. Oil for fuel literally can be distilled into a kerosene fraction, a diesel fraction, a gasoline fraction, and then like a heavy fuel oil fraction. So all of those can be used for transportation, just like the fuels that come out of an oil refinery. They need some refining, they need some processing in order to reach that point. But yeah, probably about anywhere between 30% and 50% of the yield of these processes are liquid fuels.
So that's so why have I heard more about the stupid idea of taking gas out of the air and pumping it into the earth than I have the complete madness and ridiculousness of doing that?
Yeah. So
rather than that sensible solution.
Yeah, there's six different ways that what we call carbon management projects that basically take carbon dioxide out of the air and sequester it. The way that I first started to look at it was back in the 1990s. BP as a company was looking to use Australia as a place to sequester carbon for all of their emissions, and the way that they wanted to do it was to plant trees. And I was all over that. That was just, to me, it's like, that's the solution for dealing with carbon dioxide, is to just plant more trees. Stop cutting down the ones that we're cutting down and plant more of them. Because as you increase the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere, plants grow faster. That's been proven over and over and over again. And there are some greenhouses where they inject CO2 in deliberately to make the plants grow quicker.
Yeah. But that would make you an idiot, according to Bill Gates.
I'll take that as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be the first person to have called me an idiot. So then you've got these folks, big industrial processes where they take the air and run it through amine systems, just like I used to use in oil refineries for taking CO2 and hydrogen sulfide out of gas streams. You've got these amine scrubbers that will concentrate the CO2 into a concentrated gas, which they can then liquefy, and then they can pump that down into the ground. So that's another way of sequestering carbon, and that's happening a lot here in the United States, where these big companies are doing, direct air capture. DAC is the terminology that's used. No one has figured out how to make that financially viable yet. Oh, by the way, compared to other methods of carbon capture. So it's about 2 or 3 times more expensive than other methods. The cheapest one is growing trees. Probably the next cheapest is putting carbon straight in the ground in the form of biochar. And there's plenty of biomass available and plenty of other materials, carbon-based materials that can be used to make biochar and put it in the ground.
And biochar can be used as a detoxifier, can't it?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, about 10,000 different uses. Water treatment is a big one. You probably heard of activated carbon or activated charcoal. It's used for filtration of gases and liquids. Biochar, a very, very simple use of it, is for cleaning up lagoons and ponds. Throw in a few 100 pounds into a 5-acre lagoon, and it'll sequester all of the nitrogen and phosphorus from fertilizer runoff. And that then stops the algae from growing. And within a space of 3 to 5 weeks, you can clean up a pond of algae growth. So there are folks who are taking that to a very, very large level and cleaning up, algal blooms in the Great Lakes and cleaning up algal blooms in Chesapeake Bay, algal blooms offshore from Louisiana where the Mississippi Delta goes out, and they have algae blooms every year. And those things are very, very toxic. The toxins produced by all those different algae can also be absorbed and sequestered or locked up by biochar. So it's a great way to deal with soil remediation. If there are heavy metals in the soil, biochar will absorb all of those and lock them up. You can use it for fertilizer. And when I say fertilizer, the char by itself is an inert material, but you can impregnate it with fertilizers, with microbial preparations, with fungal preparations, all of which then make it active and working in the soil. So it's a great way to administer all of those beneficial nutrients into a soil that's been depleted.
So would an example be like you take inactive biochar, you pee on it, and then that's activated?
Absolutely.
That's the fertilizer.
Absolutely. So you could take, any manure, for instance, and, create a liquid solution of manure and biochar. And not only then is the phosphorus and potassium and nitrogen that's in that manure going to be sequestered into the biochar, but the microbes and that kind of stuff that might be present in the manure, they will be also. You put that into the soil and then you're inoculating it and fertilizing it all at the same time. So certain soils, stuff that's really sandy, like all of Florida, there's not a lot of organic matter and not a lot of nutrition that's present in those soils. And so if you put an inoculated biochar in there, with the nutrients, etc., you're increasing the organic matter. You're increasing the cation exchange capacity, so the ability to hold those nutrients and the calcium, the magnesium, and the iron, all your cations. And you're also increasing the moisture retention capability. There's a stat that we hear quoted very often for biochar that a single teaspoon of biochar has the internal surface area equivalent to a football field. And so, it's got a lot of surface area embodied in it, which can hold moisture and all those different nutrients and act as a matrix for microbial and fungal populations as well. So it's a miracle substance. And once more, it's not something really new. This is something that's been done by indigenous populations for millennia. You've probably heard of terra preta.
Is that the Amazon?
In the Amazon, exactly. Yeah. Where they would basically create this charcoal and they'd put it into the dirt and mix it all in and come up with really, really incredibly fertile soil. And dark, black, rich soil. And so, there's nothing new under the sun. Now we're just industrializing this, you could say. And for a lot of good reasons, because we've got a tremendous amount of waste that we produce on a global basis, and a lot of it is going into landfill. That produces landfill gas, which is mostly methane. So any of the organic materials, like here in the United States, probably one of the biggest contributors to landfills is actually lawn clippings. From people mowing their lawns, sticking it in a bag, and it goes into the trash and it goes to the landfill. It
drives me mad. Like, so somebody cuts their grass, throws their lawn clippings away. A big lorry comes, burns oil, takes the dump, causes these gases, and then they'll go down to the shop and they'll buy fertilizer and come back and put it in their lawn to make their lawn grow better. Put the clips to get the oil
and water it again. So this is
water it again.
I mean, you cut the grass, and guess what you do? I mean, you're just destroying its transpiration ability, right? So the surface area of the leaf gets cut in half. That means that the roots tend to naturally cut themselves in half as well. And so then you've got to fertilize the lawn again in order to get it growing back to where it used to be. And whenever you fertilize, you got to water, And so the whole lawn industry here in the United States, it's amazing what you see gets spent on it. It's like billions and billions of dollars every year on chemicals, billions and billions of dollars every year on water. More billions on all of the equipment that's involved in lawn care. And then, to add insult to injury on all of this, it's like 40 million acres of lawns in this country. It's like the third or fourth biggest crop that we have in agriculture in America. When you look at soybeans and corn and wheat, all sit around about 100 million acres apiece. Lawns fourth, I think, behind those three.
The top one was it was a guy I know. He was giving off it. So what happened was he put his grass clippings into a bag, and then the bag would go stinky, and then he'd have to take it to the dump.
Yeah.
And what I told him was to do is just set your lawnmower at its highest setting possible,
Mm-hmm.
and just cut it once a fortnight or once every week. And you don't have to take the grass clippings away; they'll decompose, and then they'll actually feed the grass for you.
Yeah, they mulch just back into the lawn. And I mean, where I've had lawn myself, and I don't like having lawn. I promise you, it's like I'm trying to kill it by the acre here at my place right now. But where I've had to mow the lawn, I do exactly that. Mow it as high as I can, mow it infrequently, and just let those very small tip clippings, drop back in and act as mulch within the lawn itself. A lot of people poo-poo that idea because they're worried about the high moisture content that's created by that. Generates molds and generates fungal populations and causes all kinds of problems. And I get that. In some of the places where there's lots and lots of moisture, talking about the deep south here in the United States, the Gulf Coast and across into Florida, Georgia, it doesn't work because of that risk of fungal infections of your soil and the land. But, I'm looking at it, okay, well, that's just another imbalance that's taking place. If you get the right fungal preparations into your soil, then you're not going to get the ones out of balance that are going to cause all the problems associated with lawn. And so there's a natural approach for managing lawn, which is very, very different from the chemical approach and the fertilizer-based approach. I think most of these problems with lawn fungus are associated with the fact that the soil underneath has been largely sterilized by all the different chemicals and fertilizers used. And then these fungal populations can get out of control. One or two specific varieties of fungus. And so I think, if you go to a natural approach like I've got, I don't fertilize my lawn. I don't kill it when I mow it unless I'm deliberately trying to get rid of it and cover it up with mulch and put in another food forest. But like I said, I just tip mulch. I don't irrigate. I don't fertilize. And I've never seen a fungal problem in any of my lawns here in Michigan where I get 40 inches of rainfall. I'll call it, what's that, a meter, a rainfall a year.
Yeah, I've never had any problem with it here. And I'm in Ireland. We're quite humid. We're just not as hot. But I haven't done it now in years because I haven't. It's never been a problem for me.
Yeah.
So the big problem now is moss, where because people here cut their grass to within a millimeter of its life at the start, they call it the final cut.
Yep.
And then now when they come out of the summer or the spring, their grass is covered in moss. So they have to get the chemicals out for the moss, and then they have to get the scarifier, and then they have to lift the moss, and then it takes about July or August for the lawn to look anything decent, and then the season's over. So the grass looks nice for about 2 weeks.
In July.
I can take I've seen some lawns take August, September before they've recovered from all the scarifying and moss digging up. But anyway, back to recircle and charcoal.
So we're basically taking anything that's carbon based, and again, because of Scott's involvement with the fashion and textile industries, we're already working with a number of those different customers that are in that industry. I won't name names yet because we don't have ink on all the contracts, but one that has just gone public is Louis Vuitton. Has 2 factories in California and another factory in Texas. And these are best-in-class facilities where they have done everything that they can to minimize their waste production. And now the stuff that they can't minimize through optimization of their processes, they're asking us to take care of. And so we have been taking leather from another company, and we've been putting it through pyrolysis processes. And that pyrolysis process basically takes the gases that come off, captures those and burns them back again to heat the process, and you're just left with pure biochar once you're done. And we get about a 25% yield of biochar from leather, and it's really good quality biochar. It's got a high carbon content, high porosity, so it's something that we know works already, and that 25% yield, then becomes something that goes into agriculture. The folks that are doing that for us presently on contract are doing it where they're taking the biochar and then they're mixing it with fertilizers and using it in agriculture. So it's going to a good purpose. And we're going to be developing then our own pyrolysis processes to go at the Louis Vuitton facilities, to handle their waste specifically, and then take the biochar back from them and use it for the same types of purposes. So that's just one example. And my time has been, it's coming up on 10 months now that I've been with Recircled, and we've got probably 40 or 50 other fairly large companies that we're talking to already about taking their waste materials. We've got one of the world's largest producers of textiles as one of our investors. And, he tells us he's got about 1 million yards of waste a year from his factories, in textile waste that he wants us to take care of. So I'm really excited about, what's going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years in terms of the ability to take all of these different waste materials and turn them into something that's far more valuable than just landfill material.
Yeah, and then we're not relying on Iranian oil.
Yeah.
And that is horrible.
There's a lot of that Middle East oil used to go to the refineries that I worked in Australia, because it just come across the Indian Ocean and end up in Australian oil refineries. So the places that are getting hit are places that I used to see on a map in the oil refineries in Australia for where we'd get our oil from. And the fact about this process, or these different processes that we're using, we can literally turn any landfill, any waste manufacturing facility or waste producing location into an energy center, either for fuel or electricity or both. And so to me, it's the ultimate form of distributive energy, such that, I'll give another example of animal waste. So call it hides, bones, offal from production of livestock into meat. There's just massive quantities of that available to us, and that can all be turned into fuels and biochar as well. It's all carbon-based. And so, I'm excited about the ability to put these plants right at the point of waste generation, so it doesn't have to be transported to somewhere else. It doesn't have to be buried. It doesn't have to be incinerated, and then turn it all into valuable resources that we can use.
So so what happens is you put the plant. So say a meat plant has all this waste. So basically, you just add onto the production line of the meat plant that the waste comes out basically the end of the production line.
Yep.
It goes in, and now instead of having to pay someone to dispose of that waste, they can actually create something and make have a revenue generation from that.
Absolutely.
Which pays for itself.
I just actually put the numbers on this late last night, and I believe that a plant like that can pay back certainly in under 2 years, and maybe as short as 12 months, from electricity production, from biochar production, from fuel production, and then carbon credits and renewable electricity credits as two other, fairly minor streams compared to the energy. But they're available to us as well, with various carbon trading schemes that are available.
So that's quite quick then for capital investment.
Oh yeah, I mean, when I started my career with Shell in Australia, they were very patient with their money and would do some projects that might not pay back for 10 years, but typically they'd like projects to pay back within 3 to 5. And so anything that can pay back within 1 to 3 years would be a certain investment for a company like Shell.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
Yeah.
We chatted before about it, but we've never done on here. I always thought, it's definitely permaculture related.
It is.
And it's one of them things, it's scalable.
Very much so. It's very scalable. We can see it working in plants where it's only 1 ton per day of waste, And we've got other folks that we know are in the industry, partners with us that are building plants that are going to do 1,000 or 2,000 tons per day. So it's definitely scalable.
Great stuff. Now, is there anything I can't do?
Yeah. There are things that it can't do. It can't deal with glass, rocks,
chew up the earth, just
metals. It can't take any of those because there's no carbon in any of those. And they don't break down at the pressures and temperatures that we're operating these processes at. So those are the only things that we can't handle. And if we're looking at waste production, well, glass and metal should be recycled anyway. So as part of this whole process, and again, going back to the early days of Recircled, Scott was developing ways to take all of these different objects and articles and pull them all apart and, sort them into their different material components. So he's got that part of it figured out already in terms of the material deconstruction and sorting. So he's got different devices that he's put in place at the facility in Nebraska that can separate ferrous metals out with magnets, non-ferrous metals out with eddy current devices, and then he's left then with the textiles, whether it's plastic or bio-based textile materials. And so then it's a case of shredding and grinding to get the particle sizes down to where they can go into this reaction process, slurrying them up in a liquid in some cases to get it pumpable into the process. But largely, Scott, over the last 5 years, has had most of that materials handling aspect sorted out. And he's got it now to the point where he's looking at robotics and other devices that can be used to do all that mechanical work to make it faster. He's been doing it with armies of people so far, which is what made it, unprofitable, to be honest, was just the sheer numbers of people that we would have to use to pull all those different things apart. And so now, we feel like we've got that front end part of it taken care of. And now we've just got these different, I'll call them black boxes, that will turn it all into the fuels and electricity, etc.
Great stuff. And if anybody's interested, if you have an email or a website they can go to?
Yeah, you can hit me at graham@recircled.com, or you can go to recircled.com. It's the website. And there's a contact form there. Where it's not scalable is at the micro level, like at the residential level. So we're not quite ready to put like a little desktop, pyrolysis process in your kitchen to take care of your kitchen waste. But certainly we're already looking at, at the small local level in small landfills and stuff like that, where we can maybe, separate these streams of municipal solid waste into their bio-based components and take all of the bio-based materials and turn them into fuel, turn them into electricity, etc.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
By the way, we had no intention of talking about this tonight.
Well, I think in our normal format, we wouldn't have been able to fit in a long conversation on any specific subject. So
yeah, no, that was good. Yeah. Oh, thank you. So what's up next then? Yeah, my update. Yeah. So, basically for me, I'm sort of, I've got the school now, and I'm going to be doing a different type of content. I'm going to still do the podcasts, because basically what the podcasts have taught me, the main thing is that you shouldn't be just doing permaculture. You should be doing something in a permaculture way. Where if you're an architect, be an architect, but practice permaculture. And that's where sort of taking me. When I learned at the start was just permaculture, but not everybody can buy land and go out into the country. But that's not permaculture either. That's going out to the land, and that's going out to the country buying land, but you're practicing permaculture. So that's me thinking. So I'm just going to start practicing permaculture and demonstrating it on my own property. Good. So I have an urban property. So it's basically, I want to develop my property into a more productive system. The world's possibly turning to shit, World War III. Well, how am I prepared for that, or how's a normal householder prepared for that? It's like just sort of hedging your bets. Not hedging your bets. I'm not going to go like building bunkers and start saving a pile of food. it's the simple sort of stuff like, right, just starting from scratch, growing your own food, building a potting uh, bench. So I'm turning my shed into a podcast studio workshop, and then I'm going to be trying different stuff like if a pram they sell, so I'm going to clean it and sell it, stuff like that. Just
Yeah.
small side hustles, but designing it all through the lens of permaculture. So I'm basically living a normal life, trying to upgrade my property, but doing it by using permaculture design and demonstrating practical design. So I have the school over. If you go to school.com, find permaculture, and you can follow. I'm going to be on doing daily TikToks and a weekly YouTube video, just on my progress. So if anybody wants to follow that, so
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, Cormac, that's really the way I started in permaculture. So, oh my gosh, here's Lindsay. And Human as well. Unmute yourselves and say hi.
Yeah, we're here at the Panama Canal Museum. It looks like you guys started 40 minutes ago. I know the time zone is causing issues apparently because it's 10 to 5, so we still got 10 minutes, I thought.
Yeah, it's daylight savings messed with us here, Lindsay, because 5 o'clock for Eastern time was 49 minutes ago. So here we are.
And then we don't actually have time zone changes where we are in Panama, I don't believe.
No. And
no.
Nor should you, being so close to the equator.
Well, we made it for 10 minutes. We made it. We just had a 3-hour journey through the Panama Canal, the history of the construction, the people, the treaties,
the watershed, some guerrilla gardening on the side of the zone behind the fence.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, we ended up talking. Graham chatted. Graham told us all about biochar recircled. That kind of worked. So it worked out. It was a good opportunity for us to chat about that.
Oh, that's great.
And then so what have you been up to? You've been on a whistle-stop tour of South America?
Yeah, we've been from Mexico down to Lake Atitlan, over to Ometepe in Nicaragua, and then here in Panama. We've been here in Panama for about
almost a month now. We went up to Colón, where the mouth of the Panama Canal starts, and we're kind of hanging out at the edge of civilization there. Literally, there was not much road past where we were.
Yeah, and we were at a gathering called Tribal Gathering. It was 18 days long, and there was tribal people from all over Central and South America coming and sharing their dance, their ceremonies, their
local foods,
music, their food, teaching us, all sorts of weaving, how to make different instruments, beading. Yeah, it was phenomenal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and talking about what's going on in the jungles where they live and how the economy is ruining their lives and what they can do to possibly fix those problems. Most of the tribes are actually struggling quite hard with some large industrial giant literally killing them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was an interesting experience to have the opportunity to go there and do a talk on permaculture, and they invited the tribes to come and listen to my talk about, and just going, I had a very short overview of what permaculture is based on the principles and the ethics. And I think I went there with high hopes of being able to do something. And I still have those now. I see where there's potential for us to help the tribes, because they're coming to this gathering and they're offering so much for all the attendees, but what are they getting in return? And I feel like there was an opportunity there to assist with some water restoration techniques, remediation techniques, that sort of thing, something that they could take home with them that we could demonstrate on the land. So I see a big potential for that, and perhaps that's something I can do in the future, but I got to be honest with you, it was pretty hard hitting to see, that the issues at hand, we say in permaculture, the problem is the solution. I was really swimming hard on that one. when I was looking at the problems that I was being faced with there, with, big corporations not allowing people to go home and people being incarcerated for going home with no due cause and not being able to get out. And the women not being able to get through to politicians to get their innocent brothers out of jail, their innocent husbands out of jail. So, yeah, there's a lot there definitely to be seen. And yeah, how can permaculture help these larger, massive societal issues? Right? So that'd be an interesting conversation. I'd love to hear some solutions around that.
Yeah, and sitting on the outside of it's kind of interesting because these tribal people have such wisdom of the land. They haven't really had to think of any zones that they would live in because they can nomadically travel through the jungle and they know all of the plants. And it's not the same kind of identifiers that we're used to, where it would be like the size of the leaves or the path that it's growing, but more so when the bird starts to make that certain singing, that's when this fruit shows up.
Yeah.
And that's a thing they use for their identifiers. It's not like, oh, it's this plant and when you see this thing, it's when these other creatures start making these noises is when this is available and will travel to that part of the jungle.
Yeah, learning about the Mayan calendar and the way that they use their symbology and how the actual symbols translate into these agricultural calendars. It's really absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, thousands of years of progress just kind of quietly hiding there in the jungle. So
Amazing.
that's our past few weeks.
Amazing.
Been on a journey.
Well, even in my conversation with Cormac about the production of biochar, we had to reflect upon the fact that it's still nothing new under the sun. Biochar is something that's been around for millennia, used by Indigenous peoples to improve their soil, used deliberately, created deliberately for that purpose. So here we are in our modern civilization and, making use of things that have been around for thousands of years, but probably not doing it the same way as the people who created it would have done it.
Right. And I felt that going into the tribal village, walking in there, speaking amongst all the elders about permaculture, which is essentially adopted from all this Indigenous wisdom. I couldn't felt, it was a difficult path to walk where I wanted to honor that. Yeah, this knowledge has been coined as something else. And it really leads me to want to come up with a new way of talking about what I'm up to as well.
Yeah, I think there's a good middle ground there somewhere, Lindsay. I mean, if it wasn't for, people like Bill Mollison and David Holmgren and the folks that followed after to inform us of all of the different things that, the Indigenous culture in Australia were doing, which created the word permaculture, would it still be hidden and unknown to us? And would it, be available to all of the people who are now able to use it because we've formalized it into a design science. And so somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, right. You bring up a valid point there too, right? To be able to give it a container to be held, to move through society now as a language that we can all understand.
Yeah. There was a nice post by Mitch Rolick, and I forget who the original post was, but it basically said, permaculture, has a branding issue, and it's costing the world billions of dollars a year. I thought there was somewhat a little kitsch, I guess, in the way that it was put out there. But, when I sat and thought about it, I'm like, yeah, if permaculture hadn't become as well known as it is, we wouldn't have a lot of the solutions that we're now using. And we still haven't gone far enough in helping people to adopt all of the principles of permaculture. I really like what Cormac had to talk about just before you guys joined, where he's now trying to look at, all of the aspects of his home and his life through the lens of permaculture, and seeing how he can change things, so that his permaculture is not just about the garden and the farming and helping others to do the same thing, but every aspect of what he does in his home has some impact from permaculture. Recircled, and what we're doing, the same thing. It's like the alignment with permaculture principles is there, but it's a heavily industrial process to take care of millions and billions of tons of waste that are generated on the planet every year, and engineering and everything that's involved in it. But it's got principles of permaculture applied to it. First, produce no waste. So we're trying to figure out a way to make use of all of that. Trying to find ways that we can minimize the amount of movement of goods and services around the planet. All of these things align with permaculture principles.
So, Lindsay, you say there you're trying to reframe things a different way. Are you talking about they're practicing these indigenous practices which you learned, and then which is called permaculture, and then you're going back to talk about permaculture? Is that what you're saying?
It's just the
reframing?
actual word permaculture, and this is something that's been on topic for a number of years as well. It's just the word permaculture, and it's the word regenerative, and it's the ancestral wisdom. It's like what we're talking about. It's encompassing a few different things now, right? Where I feel like it's not just this container of permaculture, but there's other aspects of, I guess, bodies of knowledge that are called different things or fall underneath a different thing. And again, it's coming down to words and just like.
Yeah, because I think the words change, and then the meanings of the word change, and then the words get hijacked, and the words get used in a certain way that what you're doing is not permaculture. This is permaculture.
Yeah.
And then all these factions rise up and say, no, my permaculture is the best permaculture. But have you ever heard of the decolonization of permaculture?
Have I heard that? No.
Have you? So it's basically, I've heard from a guy, Ritzman Rack. He was on the podcast, one of the early episodes, and he talks about the decolonization of permaculture. And it's not taking the white man out of permaculture. It's basically crediting appropriately them practices back to the originators.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of, and actually saying, right, so say the book says this practice, you actually say, right, who did that practice, whether it be in the mountains of Chile or the Amazon. It's like trying to basically identify these practices back and give them the proper reference.
Yeah, and that's just like kind of like paying homage to your gurus. I know as a yoga instructor and as a Thai massage therapist as well, we always kind of honor and say where the knowledge is from when we're sharing information, right? Whether it be I'm about to massage somebody, I'm going to have, I'm going to chant to all the different people that created this lineage, or when I'm teaching yoga and I'm going to bring a new practice into class, I'm going to reference the instructor from India or whoever, wherever this body of knowledge comes from. So yeah, absolutely. I can see where we can be paying homage or doing respect for where the knowledge comes from. But even then, even as I'm saying that though too, I feel like, can we really trace this back to someone? Does it really go back to one person? Because there's this 100 monkey thing that goes on too, where people are finding out this, like, is this not just inherent wisdom moving through us? Does it come from one person?
So the 100 monkey theory is, if 100 people think things in the world, all of a sudden that knowledge is like out there.
Yeah, it's just like, how did everybody figure out popcorn happens, right? It kind of happened at the same time all over the planet.
My favorite one is coffee. Who came up with the idea to take this red berry and strip the flesh off of it and then roast the tar out of the seed that's inside and then grind it up and extract it with water at 212 Fahrenheit and call it coffee? Who did that? Show me the 100 monkeys.
Bless them. Bless them.
Indeed. Amen to that.
Sorry, Himon, you were going to say something there?
Well, I feel like as far as finding the roots of permaculture and where that would go, it'd be less bringing it down to an original person who's discovered it, and more what our Peruvian friends were sharing, in that it's the plants that have given us the wisdom. Yeah. It's that we're observing what they're doing, that we're able to do things with them. I don't think any one person has really figured any of that out. It's just the more of us that choose to observe nature and then work with nature, we'll end up having better results. And maybe it's those particular plants and how they've chosen to grow that's our actual roots.
Yeah, right. Like maybe the knowledge doesn't get attributed to a person,
But the actual potato that decided to grow.
Yeah, I think it's more like a group or a sort of like say that there was an ancient text with this information on it, and then that's where it originated. I think now I may be misquoting them. Hoping not.
Yeah, I don't, even with permaculture, I don't think, in fairness, I don't think you can just attribute it to the Australian Aboriginals that Bill Mollison interacted with in order to learn from them their knowledge, because their practices were very discrete based on their location within Australia. And then how do you say that those are any different, better, or worse than, say, the practices of any other Indigenous culture that's essentially doing the same thing, is making use of perennial plants as their food? And then, maybe they're migratory, maybe they're not. There's a lot of practices that I think that form part of that Aboriginal Australian heritage, which you could say are endemic to lots of different tribal groups around the world, doing the same thing just with different plants and different animals. So I don't think we can trace it back just to one group or one person. I don't think that's possible. I don't think we want to try that because it discredits all of the other valuable information that's outside of where permaculture came from.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I did start my talk off at the tribal gathering by saying that, permaculture comes from this, but I honor that it's coming from a much bigger place. And to find out from the different tribes, this is kind of a second step now, is what's kind of a common theme that permaculture can address outside of these much bigger societal, systemic issues that are more difficult to touch. It'd be nice to know, what are the top 3 for Colombia? What are the top 3 for Peru and the different tribes there, to see, okay, well, what are some solutions that we can implement so that it doesn't feel as much of a helpless situation? Because there are things we can do for sure. Next year, that's the plan, is to get down to South America next year to do a similar thing to what we've done this winter in Central America, do a similar thing in South America. And now we have a whole bunch of people that we can go meet. We have an abuela down in Peru who's just waiting for us to come see her. So it'll be interesting to do it all again next year.
Class.
Yeah, I think as far as what I've been learning with permaculture here, where we've been approaching it because of late stage capitalism, is a place of non-abundance. We have to rebuild our soil cultures in order to get to a space of abundance. Although seeing all of this abundance that the jungle has, and instead of having to grow something, just finding where it grows, makes me think, okay, if the whole world jumped on board and we permaculture hard enough that everything was regenerative and healthy, what would permaculture be doing next? What kind of biodiversity stuff would we be creating? Like, I really love some of the trees here that if I, as a family, were to just kind of guide it a little bit on how it's growing, this tree could end up being the walls to my house. It could support my roof. It's never going to fall over. Like, my next generation of family would live in the same tree that's only getting bigger and the house gets larger. Like, I see permaculture kind of taking that route. Once all of our problems have been solved, if the whole world actually wants to solve all of its problems.
Yeah, the world wants to solve the problems if there's a pound in it for a certain percentage of people.
Yes, there you go. Therein lies the problem. Late stage capitalism.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's crazy. Some of the stuff's happening here on the guise of saving the planet is crazy. And like we chatted about it earlier, Bill Gates saying planting trees is ridiculous. that you should be doing direct air capture. And that's what money men are saying. It's crazy because they're not getting grants for planting trees on the same scale.
He's just trying to push what he's invested in. That's all he's doing.
Yeah, but he gets the TV, he gets the people buy it. People think, "Oh, isn't that great?"
Yeah.
Wow, the world.
I just want to help enough so I don't get executed.
That's a good start. Yeah. Keep your head attached to your shoulders.
We're doing our best.
Yeah, I take it. Have you had a few scrapes down there?
Have we done a few which? Sorry?
Have you had a few scrapes down there? Is that what you're saying?
A few. Well, I got my camera stolen and all my money. No more podcasts. So yeah, no, we're good.
You guys missed the worst of the uprising in Mexico after the cartels went.
Our path has been very, it's as soon as we leave, it's something, right? Except, we were in Guatemala City in Zone 1. We're wondering, like, the flags are at half mast and we're the only white people around, and people are looking at us like, what the heck are you doing here? Yeah. And I look it up on the news, and of course it says state of emergency, and
don't go to where we are at this time.
And here we are, and then same thing, right? Puerto Vallarta, we went, and then it's on fire, but we
had to call our friends. They're doing okay. They can hear the gunfire, but their houses are made of concrete, so it's not as bad as people think it is.
Yeah, and then when we left Ometempe, Conception, the volcano started getting active, and
it hasn't done anything since like the late 70s, but now it's like kaboom.
So we seem to be leaving at the right time.
What kind of energy you usually behind?
We're disruptive.
I have a similar story, right? So I took my trip to the Middle East, and I come back here, and then stuff happens in the Middle East, and the exact gate in Dubai airport where I was sleeping was the one that got bombed by the first drone that came into Dubai.
Wow.
And they're showing all the smoke inside the airport and gate B12. I'm like, I know exactly where that is because I was there. Missed it by 2.5 weeks.
Wow.
Wild. Good thing we got some golden horseshoes kicking around.
Amen.
Yeah, don't get that reference. Yeah. No, thank God there's nothing here. That's all I'm saying. Yet, although there's a lot of issues stirring up. But that's for another day.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. Well, it's good to see you. It's good to see you're safe anyway.
Yeah.
We'll be back in Canada next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The temperature is going to drop
like you're
20
excited
Celsius
about
for
that.
us.
Yeah, it's going to be cold. And we are not prepared.
I haven't worn shoes in 4 months. Yeah. And I'm going to have to wear shoes when I get there. I'll have to buy shoes to wear.
Well, glad we made it for a little bit of the chat.
Yeah.
Very good. Good to see you both.
Great stuff. Right, I think we'll end it there, and we'll get a better update in a couple of weeks. You'll be home and settled by then.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice one, guys. Thanks very much for watching. And we'll chat to you all next week. Cheers.